Okay, hello guys. So I was teaching a lesson to everyone who's here today. Thank you to those people. And well, I forgot to record like the first 10 or so minutes. So this is going to be basically going over how to get your IDE, your developer interface, set up, and how a few minutes of actual instruction. So the first thing you're going to want to do, and this took us a little bit of time, probably like 20 minutes to do in class. It was, first of all, what we have to do is we go to not.com.org, and it's going to load up here, and it's kind of, or no, it's not, because, okay, never mind. But if we go over here to download JGrasp, it's going to redirect you. There's a little survey right here, just ignore that. Scroll down. What you're going to see is this thing called JGrasp 2.04, whatever. So, scroll down, and depending on your operating system, I don't think any of you guys are using Linux, but if you are, sure, there it is. Mac OS X will be the JGrasp package, and the JGrasp EXE is for Windows. So, open the file, run the file. I'm not really sure how it works for Mac OS. For Linux, it's more complicated, but for Mac, you just install it, I think, and you just run the file. Hit allow. You don't need to mess with any real settings during its installation. Just hit OK, allow. It's a completely safe file. It's developed by the National Science Foundation, so super safe. Just let it accept all the things that it's saying. Hit next. That'll finish downloading. Then the next thing you need to do is look up JDK in Bing or Google or whatever it is. And you're going to see this link right here. It's going to be like the first link. It's going to say Java SE downloads Oracle technology. Oracle is the company that creates Java, so we'll click on that website. It's going to take us right here. And don't worry about NetBeans. Don't worry about this stuff. Just go download Java. Platform JDK 10. Now we scroll down a bit. Hit accept license agreement. It'll say thank you. And then depending on your operating system, you download one of these. I want Linux, so I think that's why it displays Linux first, but you can choose one of those things. Mac OS, it's the same thing. Solaris, I don't know what that is. Windows, again, just a file. Open it, run it. It's going to take you through quite a few things. The file itself is actually going to be fairly large too, so this might take a little bit for the download and for the installation, especially if you're on an older or a slower computer. That's definitely what happened. In our case, for some of them, it took a little bit longer. So, sorry, just ignore this. I don't know what that is. But, next, we need... so now we have those two things installed. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to open JGrasp. And the first time you... This is what it'll look like later. The first time you open JGrasp, ignore the screen right now, it's going to, to say, do you want to allow them to, record some information about how you use JGrasp for their purposes. That would be if you encounter an error in JGrasp, it might send that information to them so they can go, okay, what is this error? How do we fix it? Stuff like that. You can hit allow, don't allow, whatever you want. The other thing is it might say something like, JGrasp has not been tested on your platform, and therefore, and that's basically just hit OK or don't show again, because it'll show up every time you start up JGrasp, unless you hit don't show again. So just click OK, click don't show again. I think that's because they haven't tested it out on Mac or Linux as extensively as they have on Windows or something like that, but it doesn't really matter. Everything will still work A-OK. So, then you come into JGrasp. It's going to go completely blank. None of this stuff's going to be here. This is previous lesson, or the lesson stuff. Then we will go File, New, and when it first started off, it's going to have more options right here. It's going to have C, C++. You scroll down to Java, click Java. It's going to create a new file for you. Now, this is kind of the magic stuff. Just type after me, public class. We're going to call this class Hello World. And we will put an opening curly brace and a closing curly brace down there. Then a tab to indent. That's what we do inside of those curly braces. We're going to do, well, we can create an extra line right there. Public static void main parentheses, string, square brackets, opening, closing, args, and then again with, again with the curly braces. Sorry, that was a mistake right there. So now that we have this, we're going to type in system.out.println, parentheses, quotation mark, don't do the second quotation mark yet, do hello world, or some other message, whatever you want the message to be, parenthesis, and semicolon. Then, the two most important buttons in JGrasp. But before that, actually, I'm going to show you one more button over here. Something I talked about in class. These little line numbers right here, you don't need to type these in. Please don't type those in. It'll give you errors. This is something called line numbers that tells you, it numbers each line for you. And that can be kind of helpful for like errors and stuff like that, because then it tells you exactly where you need it. It'll be like line 5 is an error, so you can go back to there. Or I could be like, hey, check line 5, and that would work better. So I encourage turning them on. You can toggle them on and off right here. Then if we go over to this plus button, it's going to say compile file. So you click that, and the first time you run a file, it's going to say command requires a named file. Save file now. Hit save. And this is your Java file, helloworld.java. And you can save this wherever you want to save it. It doesn't really matter. Save it to documents, let's say. So the only thing you have to make sure is that the name of the file, hello world, is the exact same as this. Leave out the .java part in the class itself, but make sure that this matches up with that exactly. Case, even including the capitalization and stuff. So then we've got that, we hit save. It's going to take a second, it's compiling, it says operation complete. There we go, we're good to go. Going to hit the little running man, this is the other important one, and it is going to run our program, and it's going to print out hello world. It's going to execute the program, hello world, operation complete. And that is the first program that pretty much every programmer in the entire world has ever written. That is the first program everyone does this, hello world. So we've printed out hello world, and that's pretty cool. But right now it's basically mumbo jumbo, right? I'm just like saying, hey, type this, hey, type that, type this, and it's going to type you this. I mean, maybe you could infer that you could change hello world to something else right here, and it would print out something else, and that is, of course, correct. You hello word, compile, run, and that would work. Gotta run. Hello word, sure, see. But we're going to go into what each of these things are. This up here, this is a class. Everything in Java is an object, because Java is an object-oriented programming language. So what this means is that all the code that you will ever write is going to be underneath some sort of object. An object is usually a class. Okay? And this is like, that's why the file name has to be the same as the class name, because the class is the file is the class. So the public, it's called a keyword. Like each one of these things, public, class, static, void, those are all keywords. They're purple. Don't worry about public for now. We'll get more into that way later. But class, I mean, that's pretty obvious. You have to tell them that this is a class. And then this is the name of the class. And you can name it whatever you want, but again, it has to match with the file. Otherwise, you will get an error. Then, so that's the class thing, and you open it with the curly brace and close it with the curly brace. And it will always, the class should always be the outermost curly braces, right? If I delete this right there, it's going to have no closing, and it's going to fail. If I delete this, or this one, it's also going to fail, because you need to have an equal amount of opening and closing curly brackets, and you need to make sure there's nothing out here. Okay. There are a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, until I tell you otherwise, everything needs to be inside there. Next, we are going to move on to this. This is called a function. And again, public and static and void, you don't know what those mean yet. We'll learn about void, what that means fairly soon. But for now, just like remember that that's how you define a class. Public, static, void, and then the name of the function. Now, you could not change the main function to be whatever function name you wanted it to be. It has to be main, it has to be spelled this exact way. And the reason why is because behind the scenes of Java, there's a whole bunch, like thousands and thousands of lines of code that do all the behind the scenes work, that actually work with the computer directly, right? You are working kind of it's kind of a middleman between you, because the computer can't understand this text. It needs to have something like a compiler come along and compile it, right? And change it into code that the machine can read. And so it's doing all this behind the scenes work, right? The behind the scenes work knows that when you run this file, it knows, okay, when I run the file, I need to call this function. It says, first, okay, set up Java, get everything like set up to work, and then run this function called main with the string args. This is very important. We won't really get into why we do this. It's super complex. You won't really need to know anything about that. But this is a special function that is always activated, and it is the only function, actually, as far as we know so far, that is automatically activated. Because later on we'll create our own functions, and you actually have to get those called from main. So that's a function. Again, it's got the parentheses, it's got the closing or the opening bracket and the closing bracket, and then inside of that it's got the code. So when it starts reading the program, it's going to go, okay, run this method. Doesn't matter where main is. Main could be anywhere. It's going to run main. It's going to run the code inside of those curly braces. And then I think I talked about this during the actual lesson, and this might be in the video, so you might be seeing this twice. But system.out.println is its own type of function. It is system, and system.out is a class, and within that class there is a function. So we're saying, okay, go to the system.out class, which is a class that's built into Java. Into Java, because Java has this thing called libraries, where the people who made Java, they did all the behind the scenes work, right? But then they were like, hey, you know what? Let's throw in some code that's going to be commonly used, right? Because actually, to print a line to the console, that would take tons and tons of code. It's like much more complicated. Like, where would you even start? I don't even know how you would start, right? How do you find the console? Like, all this stuff, right? It's very complex, but it really doesn't need to be. It's a very simple operation. It doesn't need to be that complex. So they've included this function that does that kind of that work for you, right? Nobody is ever going to ever tell you that you need to actually code your own println. That's completely useless. No one would ever tell you to do that. So we say, okay, go into the system.out class, which is included in Java. It's kind of amorphous. It's like always there. You can always access it. Don't worry too much about this class stuff right now. Just know that system.out.println prints whatever is in here, in these parentheses. Also, a thing to keep in mind, end it with a semicolon, the whole line. You don't need to end it with the class and the function, because those have the curly braces that kind of implies that. And I mean, don't put them there. It's not like optional, like actually don't put them there, because that will cause it to fail. Then inside of the parentheses, we have what's called a string literal. So a string literal is called that because it doesn't change, right? This is actual physical text. The program is not going to delete something from this text. It is literally hello world, literal. That's its final, or hello word it is right now. And you denote that with these little quotation marks right here, a starting quotation mark and an ending quotation mark. That's a very common theme in Java, starting character and an ending character to just tell you when something starts, when something ends. So I think that's about where I left off, and I might have overlapped a bit, but it wouldn't hurt you to watch both of the videos. Definitely watch the second part, and I'll upload these as part 1 and part 2. Thank you to everyone who came to class, and for those of you on vacation and stuff, go back to the channel or wherever I have these videos and watch the next one to continue from here.